So there's an overview map, just kind of shows you the whole North Shore area, but what we're dealing with is the right side and the center of that map. You can go to the next slide, Deb. So I'm going to be talking about the Lust Road Gate, which has always been a really, really good spot. Right now for sparrows and through the winter behind, if you've been there lately, you see the big work area as soon as you go through the gate there on the left. That used to be one of the best sparrow fields probably in the state, at least in Central Florida for sure, and it was just amazing. But obviously, you know, there's a lot of work going on out there and they needed a spot to put their stuff. I've heard rumor that they're going to take some of that field back and let it regrow, and hopefully by next year it'll be a sparrow field again. But another good thing that actually just opened up just prior to the gate is there's a road that goes out to the right with a little yellow gate that's now open, and they put in a parking area, and that whole area back there is great for sparrows, but what it allows you to do is to go in, walk in. There's a pedestrian gate that's pretty much open 24/7, but you can walk in through the main entrance. There's next to the main gate, there's a pedestrian gate. So it allows you to walk in there during the week when it's normally closed to all of us. So that's a really cool thing that they're doing. I don't know how long it's going to be open. I think they're doing it as a derivative to the closure of Magnolia Park. So the bikers can park there, the cyclists, and ride in. So I think once they reopen Magnolia, they may get rid of that. So I would take advantage of it while you can. Like I said, when you park in that area or go through the main gate, we've been seeing 7 or 8 different sparrows, Lincoln, Vesper, I think Kathy had a clay colored, chipping sparrow, song sparrow, Savannah, swamp. All those have been right in that first little canal area, as well as just up on the left behind the kiosk, and back behind in the parking area. It looks like there's a question. Yeah, I think they were trying to put a nature center in there, and it kind of fell through with different politicians and everything in Apopka. But again, we're just lucky that we can actually access that now without being trespassers. So when you go through the gate, it's one of my favorite spots on the whole drive. We're very fortunate there. If you want to actually leave it on that slide, yeah, you're fine. So the 2 big birds that are going on right now, and I actually got both of those birds 2 days ago by walking into the gate, the least flycatcher and the ash-throated flycatcher. Those both will flag you as rare on eBird, and it's one of the easiest spots to get them. If you go in, walk in the pedestrian gate and go past the welcome kiosk where the ambassadors are, there's a sugarberry tree there and a whole stack of sugarberries and other vines along that fence line. Both of these birds have been in there for going on a month at least for the least, and probably a little bit longer for the ash-throated. And if you haven't seen these birds, they're great. And anytime you go through the drive, especially in the mornings on Friday, as Deb mentioned, the early morning birders will always be stopped there and, you know, checking out and waiting for those. But along that same area, I mean, we get northern water thrush. Right now along that fence is great for painted buntings. All those sparrows come through there. But the flycatchers are kind of the highlight of that area right now. We were fortunate enough, the Anis that were down on Hooper Farm, which I think Susan's going to mention. I was over at the beach chasing a seagull and started getting my phone blown up by everybody saying, the Anis are on Lust Road, they're on Lust Road. So they flew over there for a minute until a harrier chased them away. But that area, just the gate area, I did it 2 days ago, and I think I had 48 species just right there. You get a lot of flyovers with eagles, all the shorebirds. Juanita, those trees on the left are sugarberry, the first big tree, and then a couple of those other smaller trees, but there's only a small section there, and those flycatchers are usually in there. The other day, it's funny because I don't associate a flycatcher, but when I was watching the ash-throated, it came down and was eye level with me and was eating berries. So go figure. You know, it's not a ash-throated berry catcher, but it was eating berries. So, you know, keep an eye out for it. And there's opportunistic like anything else. The Lee's flycatchers in the same area, closer, there's a little creek there. And if you go look back towards that chain link fence, it's heavier foliage. It seems to stay about eye level, whereas the ash-throated usually is up a little bit higher than that bird. But again, they've been very easy to get, and everybody's been getting them there. So if you want to go to the next slide. So a friend of mine, Ben, told me the other day, I was actually working the ambassador second shift on Sunday, and he said, "Oh, did you see the green-winged teals?" And I said, "No, I've been looking for them since, you know, November." And he said, "Oh, they're right up here." And so I'm only doing the Lust Road gate area, but this is actually going up towards the third stop, and they were there on the right. And he had 5, I had these 3. So that picture's from Sunday. But that section in between, like once you pass the gate, when it opens up on that big pond on your right, back in June, we had a yellow-breasted chat back in there in the distance. But if you check those big dead trees out there, you're liable to get bald eagles, osprey, cormorant, anhinga. The Peregrine Falcon likes to sit there sometimes. It's like I said, it's such a great little spot. But these guys were at the third stop on the right. And the only other thing I'll say about the gate, especially with that pedestrian gate being open, we used to walk in, and if you walk to the U, it's 1 mile. And if you, in the afternoons, if you walk back that way, you've got the sun at your back and taking pictures. It's pretty amazing. So if you haven't been there, this is your first stop. And don't just drive through. I know in the afternoons when there's lots of traffic and everything, it's dusty and kind of tough. But if you can get out there early in the morning or on a Friday morning, the gate area is great. And if it gets busy and you get stuck there and you've got all these great birds, you don't have to go all the way through. You can turn around and go back out the gate and come back when it's not as busy. So I will pass this on to Susan. She'll go with the next section of the drive.
All right. Okay, if you've been to the drive, or if you're a birder in this area, you kind of already know about the U, but if you don't, it's just kind of an intersection of where Conrad crosses Lust. There is a little U shape in the road because there's kind of an extension of one of the canals that kind of juts into Lust, so you kind of have to make a little turnaround by it. This picture, actually, Sam took the picture of the bobcat there one morning. If you come early enough, you will see bobcats down in that area, especially if you look down Conrad Road. The area I'm also going to talk about is Conrad going down to Hooper Farms Road. So let's go to the next one. That's kind of where we're looking at. So before you get to the U, we have a kind of a little celebrity there on the bottom right. Of course, I'm not the photographer, those guys are, but those are the gray-headed swamp hens. They're kind of located right between the U and like the last pullover on Lust before you get to the U. So this is us kind of looking at the U, the picture on the left. You can see how the road's going to the left. It's going to make this little U-shaped jag around that little extension that comes out. But this area is really good. On the left, there's a lot of plants that, like, you'll see sedge and marsh wrens in. You're going to see all those herons, egrets, gallinules. Sam already said the raptors, they're not limited to any one area. So you look up, you'll see a harrier going by, especially on the left. I always see one over in that Hooper Farms area. But we also have the purple gallinules. So those are kind of our little birds that you'll see in that area. And let's go to the next. So then there's a little water that just comes up into Lust. And I'm telling you, I've seen pied-billed grebes in it. You will see purple gallinules. And that's a picture, the top picture of purple gallinule chicks. I caught them crossing. There's a little cement edge right on that little waterway. And I just thought they were so cute with their big feet. But there's a green heron in there. You will always see osprey. Sometimes you'll see a kingfisher sitting on one of the, somewhere in this area too. There's also a little metal dock that goes out into one of the lake areas. and Asoras are frequently heard in that area. You know, you have to kind of get there early and it has to be quiet to see them, but they are heard in that area. And we can go to the next. So then I call this the Warbler Corner of the U. Warbler Corner is kind of a different park, but in this area, these trees don't look too impressive right now. But when the migration comes through, there's a lot of plants that the palm warblers and actually painted buntings are actually there now. But when we do have warbler season, this is a really good area to see all types of warblers. It seems funny because it's kind of a watery location, but you will see prairies, magnolias. We had a lot of yellows that were zipping back and forth across Lust from these trees over to some other big bushes. Yellow, common yellow throats, red wings, those are all in this area. This is also an area a lot of photographers like to park and take pictures. So you will always see a lot of cars at this area and a lot of people with big lenses. We can go to the next.
Susan, the trees are willows.
Willows, yeah. So we can go to the next. And this is kind of, Jack took one of these pictures of a beautiful yellow rumped. And next. So remember how I said, if you go down Conrad, you can walk. It's not open for driving, but you can walk or bike. And Conrad Road goes back to Hooper's Farm. Hooper's Farm is, you know, there's a lot of interesting things back there. You'll see the turtles. We found a red belly snake. When we were looking for the Ani, we saw this real nice otter sitting there that we didn't want to disturb because he was a pretty big guy. There are also a lot of alligators. You do have to be careful in nesting season. They are real close to that corner. But Hooper's Farm is where they first heard the groove-billed Ani back in that area. So that's kind of a nice area. There's a lot of painted buntings back there. It's interesting, you do have to be careful. It is a working area, so you don't want to get in the way of any of the construction people. So you do kind of want to, you know, be good, be nice, don't, you know, be too in the way of anything that's going on. Next. So this is my terrible picture of the Ani because I'm not a photographer, but that was when he was first seen. But this area has had a lot of interesting things. 2 years ago, there was a Vermilion Flycatcher, a female Vermilion Flycatcher. Obviously the bunting, or the Ani, it is still here, but it has moved to a different area now. It's a park, but it hasn't been seen consistently because it is a big area. And also this bottom, there are some bears in this area, so you never know what you're going to see. So let's go next. And I just thought I would take a second because Anis, we kind of will see, last year we saw a smooth bill, this year we've got a groove bill, and they do look a lot alike. So I just thought I'd go over real quickly the difference between them. So on the groove bill, if you look real close at the face, you can see there's more bare skin around the eyes. It does have grooves on the bill, but those aren't always, not very noticeable. The smooth-billed Ani has a smoother bill, obviously, and it also has a big bump on the top of the bill. So the bill actually looks a little bit better. And those feathers right at the base of the bill usually will stick up, kind of have that little fluffy look on top. One of the best ways is to listen to the calls because the calls will be different. But that's kind of, I just thought that way might be a nice little thing to go over. All right, very good. Next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jack Horton, and we are certainly glad everyone is here. Real quick, some safety items. Wear masks, socially distance when appropriate. Be aware of your surroundings. Do not approach the alligators. Check your mirrors. Pull over if you need to. If you're going slow, fine. Check your mirrors. If there's cars behind you, find a place you can safely pull over, or pull one of pullover areas and let them by. And while you're in the pullover area, look for stuff, because the more you look, the more you'll see. Share the road is a big thing now because there's a lot of cyclists coming through the entrance of Lust. They're normally coming in through Magnolia Park. Watch when you open your doors. When you stop and open your door, check your mirror, because cyclists will come up, and we've already had an incident where a door is opened and took out a cyclist. Any gates, fences, or flag tape, don't go beyond it. The yellow pipe gates, if there is a designated, if there's an open area next to it, that means you can walk through there. You can go through there. But if there's not, that means don't go through there. The front gate opens at 7. The front gate closes at 3, and you should be out the exit gate and off the property by 5. So please plan accordingly. If you come in at 3 o'clock, you got 2 hours, and you're going to have to rush yourself to be out by 5. Don't feed the wildlife there. It's against the rules. And don't pet the otters, as cute as they are. Don't do that.
Go in your room.
That's right.
Next slide. Next slide, please.
Oh, shoot, I didn't know that.
That's right.
I'm going to talk about Lust Road to from Conrad up to the pump house to start with. And first bird I got there is a Peregrine Falcon. She has been working this area for the 3 years I've been following her. You can find her up on the wire at times. She seems to this season has moved not so much on the wires up there, but on the actual post and on actual outcroppings from the post. She used to be almost exclusively on the wires. Previous slide, you can find her eating on the road. Here we go. This is, I believe, a common gallinoo, and it's a common meal for her. She will go after them on Lust itself. She will stoop down and be about 2 feet off the ground and go straight down Lust. And she looks to punch the gallinoos in the head with her closed talons. And I've seen her do it out in the water as well. Go after them out in the water and punch one in the head, bank around real tight, punch it again, bank around, pick it up, and take it somewhere to start the process. Next slide, please. Also, it's a good area on those poles to find bald eagles, both mature and immature. I have seen the Peregrine Falcon there chase off a bald eagle, get up above it, come down on its back, and basically escort it off of its hunting area. Next slide, please. This is from one of 2 feeding frenzies that I got involved with that were very close to Lust, very, very close to Lust. And this feeding frenzy involved ospreys, great blue herons, snowy egrets, and great egrets. And it lasted about 20, 30 minutes in the morning. And I went through in the morning, and then there's all these birds just standing around this one area. I believe it's because the oxygen levels in the water at that particular area, that particular cell, have gotten low. And so the fish come to the surface, and the birds all seem to have gotten that text message at some point in time over the night. And they're all there in the morning, and then they start going, and it's crazy. It is my best advice if you're there taking a photo is just pick one bird, stay with it, follow it, pan with it. Once it's past you, just pick another one and stick with that one. Next slide, please. This is from another feeding frenzy, and it was just great egrets and snowy egrets. It was on the left side of Lust. And again, this one lasted about 45 minutes, and it was just nuts. There was just hundreds of each of these birds, and they're just going in. And you can see in this picture, they're dragging their feet, and they drag their feet so they can go slower across the water. And almost everyone that went out there got a fish, went back, would eat it, and they're just taking turns going through this area. And it's just amazing. I've seen other feeding frenzies out there, but usually they're further off. But the 2 I've seen on Lust have been close by, and it's really nice. Next slide, please. There's a lot of black-billed whistling ducks on this section of Lust. They'll be on the side of the road. They'll come gather in the middle of the road. They are reluctant to move. If you go past them, they'll fly around you and like land behind you. And they're just there hanging out, having a good time. Next slide, please. There are black-crowned night herons all along Lust tucked in. There's one by the U. If you look at the U shape, the upper left part of the capital U, that section, there's one there. It's been there for many, many weeks. Next slide, please. There's all sorts of ducks out there. It's just ringnecks, all sorts of stuff. And I got this shot while I was taking shots of the Peregrine Falcon, and then this guy came by, and I think it saw the peregrine, and it just banked hard and flew away. The peregrine didn't go after it. Next slide, please. This palm wobbler I got out there. And this is by the pull off on the left-hand side where there's a pole, and there's also a piece of concrete very close to it on the left-hand side. And this guy was hopping around getting bugs. Next slide, please. I've been told 19 recently, this week, I think, 19 Wilson snipes along Lust. Next slide, please. That particular Wilson snipe was taken off of Loughland. Common gallinus, they're all over. They will be by the side of the roads, and they will decide to cross the road right in front of you. So be mindful of that. It doesn't seem to make any sense that they're already on the side, and they just want to go the other side and right in front of you. They are not like squirrels. They don't go back and forth. They just go across. So be mindful of that. This is an adult chastising a youngster. Next slide, please. The historic pump house, it's still used. It costs a lot of money for them to use it, so they try not to use it too much, but they still use it. This is a night shot that I took during one of our photo sessions during the Bird Festival. And I was out there with Steve Coleman. This was done with light painting and done during the blue hour after the sun had set. Next slide, please. Lots of alligators around the pump house. Please be careful. Some of them are friendly. If you recall, a couple months ago, there was one around the bathroom area near the pump house and around the yellow pipe gates as you walk up to the pump house. That alligators had to be removed. And they've gotten to the point with the removal that they have a system. They have one of those poles with a can of spray paint that people use for the highway to mark stuff. And that's how they mark it for the trapper, because if they don't do that, the trapper tends to come out and take 5 or 10 alligators, not knowing which one was the exact one. The one that was removed live. That is very unusual, but currently they're worth more alive than dead. But we're pretty sure there's some people feeding them out there and approaching them. And please don't do that. It's not, in the long run, it's very unhealthy for the alligators. Next slide, please. Currently, there's 2 nests in the pump house area. You can get good views. This was taken this past weekend. This is a male bringing a stick to the female, and they stand their feathers up like that. I was taking shots of the female in the nest, and then her feathers went up like that, and then the male came into the frame. If the male places the stick in the nest, the female will wait. Male flies off to go get more sticks. Female rips it out and places it somewhere else. It's hysterical. But there's 2 nests out there. Next slide, please. And this is what you often see is the female standing on the nest by herself, male's off doing who knows what. Next slide, please. And then if you go over the bridge and keep going straight, you are on Wetland Road. This is a shot from the old days when the telephone poles were there before they mysteriously disappeared, and nobody knows where they went, but they vanished. Next slide, please. This is another place that the peregrine falcon likes to hang out. There's a lot of snags on Welland, and she likes to use those snags to eat. If you look at the snags and look at them closely, that are out in the water on Welland, if you see one where the top 6 inches or so are a darker color than the rest of the snag, that's one that she's using. Next slide, please. very common to find fulvous whistling ducks there in groups of a dozen or more, or sometimes even hundreds, and right by the side of the road. Welland is one of my favorite places to photograph first thing in the morning. I'll go through, I'll go past the U. I want to get to Welland. My vehicle acts as a blind. I have the sun behind me. I can shoot out my window. Other people are piling up at the U and stuff, and it gives me some extra time. And the ducks and other wildlife seem less likely to leave that area in the morning as they are later in the day. They seem much more like, okay, we got to leave. There's somebody here. Next slide, please. These guys are there quite often when they're around. And again, this is on Welland, and they're right there and they're hunting. And it's really quite the sight to see them hunt. It's really a lot of fun. Next slide, please. And same thing with the green herons. I'm colorblind, so shades are really tough for me. And I really have to look for shapes with the green herons. They really are tricky for me to spot, but they are all over Welland, and same thing on roach. Next slide, please. A lot of turtles on Welland, and they pull up on these pieces of wood and get some solar energy. Next slide, please. Same thing of the ringneck ducks, and this one actually you can see the ringneck. Yay. But again, they typically are piled up. They're close by. The morning sun is good. It's low. It looks really good. Next slide, please. Bunch of little Bernie Sanders. Cattle egret, they have a roosting area on Welland. It's by the pull-off. And they had a big nesting area there this past August. And there they are. Aren't they adorable? Next slide, please.
Okay, that's going on to me.
And now we're going lakeside.
Okay, so at the pump house, little bridge, you have a left or right opportunity. And this is really your only opportunity to see Lake Apopka on the drive. So if you haven't done it, definitely take the left. So you're going to be sharing the road with cyclists because this whole levee is part of the loop trail. So I'll just tell a little bit about the geography of Lake Apopka, that this levee is what separates the wetlands from Lake Apopka, and all this green was once part of the lake until the levees were built. Levees all through the system, converting the wetlands to cells that were farm fields from the 40s to the 90s, when they were bought out by the St.Johns River Water Management District to restore water quality in Lake Apopka, which really has come a long way. It works just by stopping the input of nutrients and other techniques, taking out the gar. We'll have a special bird chat with more details on this, but Dr. Eric Marsoff would be willing to do it. But anyway, your key point here is that this was all once part of the lake. And the loop trail all along the lake on the levee was completed between 2013 and 15, and it goes 18 miles to Lake County. And then bicyclists can go anywhere in the whole system, including on the Wildlife Drive. But it's interesting that the levee was breached in 2017 by the storm surge from Hurricane Irma. And this is a picture of it looking south from the pump house. About a mile south of the pump house, it broke. And the water flooded in through the entire Lust Road area, flooded Lust Road. The Wildlife Drive was closed for maybe 2 months, and then they reopened it that Christmas. And that is the source of much of the water along the Wildlife Drive. They had no ability or even interest in pumping it back out to the lake. So, but they did raise the levees to make sure this didn't happen again. Laboriously, they raised the levee 3 feet. So this kiosk here on Lakeside was one of those developed by Orange Audubon Society. It's the Wetland Plants Kiosk. And if you want to try to figure out some of the plants, you can study them on this kiosk. And if you look right in the spring, this is an area where you may see nesting egrets. And if you look left, there's a lot of interesting plants. And also you see some birds like common yellowthroat, sparrows, swamp sparrows, and so forth. And the nice plants are duck potato, this white one, marshmallows, these pink ones, and seaside goldenrod. And if you look right in the willows, the trees along the right side, that's the place to find warblers, and particularly yellow warblers in migration. In September, we see a lot of yellow warblers in there. And if we're lucky, 1 or 2 may stay all winter. Last year or the year before, it was easy to find 1 at the Crazy U, actually, in the willows. It's not common that they stay all winter, but they do. Now, offshore, it was just nothing but lake, and they planted spatterdock using nursery-grown spatterdock plants attached to cement blocks, dropping them down to make a border of this. And it is all filled in. This is about 4 years later. Not just spatterdock, but other plants are growing in there. And all this is habitat for fish underneath and for birds. And some common birds you see lakeside are Anhingas. The Anhingas do really well along the lake shore of Lake Apopka. In part, I understand, because the hydrilla is not bad. They can dive and get fish without any impediment. There's also some cormorants. And some winter birds to see lakeside are the horned grebe. This is not an easy bird to see, but it's seen every couple of years. And Forster's terns and ring-billed gulls are out there, maybe Caspian terns. So you should definitely look left into the lake. And if you bring your scope, you might see some of these. And some of the good birders saw lesser scaup and 1 greater scaup this past year. The greater scaup doesn't usually come to Florida. It's a migration path is much farther west. So that was a good sighting. And looks like we're already then off the Lakeside Loop onto Loughland Road.
All right, so it's back to me. So Loughland Road is 2.4 miles if you come from the lakeside, the way Deb just mentioned. This is always that corner there when you're at the lake and you're turning right onto Loughland. There's a yellow gate there, so you can't proceed unless you're on a bike. But when you take that right back towards the interior of the drive, along the left there and the right, that corner has been really good lately for merlins, and as well as Cooper's hawks, and you usually get some harriers flying around there as well as small birds and warblers. As you go down, and you'll meet back up with roach, and there's a little bridge there. That's where a couple of years ago, our friend Joe spotted this Vermilion Flycatcher, and funny enough, Brian ID'd it. Well, there was 4 of us there. I think it was Lewis and Mary and myself, and Joe saw the bird, said, "Hey, that's not a Phoebe," and Brian identified it, and it was a life bird for him. He had never seen one in person, and he was the one that ID'd it. So it was kind of a cool story. And that was 2 years ago. It was 19, at the end of 19. We actually had a bird. We think it was the same bird that came back, another female this year, but she was only there maybe 4 weeks and very sporadic right there at that little bridge area where Roach and Loughland meet up, and then she was gone. But the Phoebes pestered her pretty good and ran her off, and she moved down Loughland a little ways and then was kind of gone. So a little insider tip is when you get to that intersection, before you get to that little bridge, and even if you come in from the road side, there's a little pull off straight ahead of you. There's a telephone pole there that's really good for ospreys feeding. I've seen eagles come in, chase the ospreys off, take the fish, and eat on that pole as well. But that pond to your left there is just lately, last weekend, I had gadwall and widgeon in that pond with the ringneck ducks, which was kind of nice. You can go to the next slide.
Can you just address whether a birder would want to go lakeside or roach at this time?
In the winter, especially if you have a scope, or if you're following someone that has a scope, which is what I do, even in COVID times, I don't, we obviously don't share optics or anything, but a lot of times I'll follow Paul or Mary or somebody that is going to scope it and take the time. And then what I do, since I've got a long lens, is I'll take pictures of what I'm seeing and then I can come home and blow it up. But in the winter, it's kind of both of them are good. If you don't have a scope, you're going to see more on the interior side, which would be Welland and Roach. Again, like what Jack said, with most of the green herons, all of the shorebirds. But there's been really good ruddy ducks through there. They had red-breasted merganser in there in December. Then I'm talking about on the Roach side or Welland side. But on Roach, that's where we've had the horned grebe in the past. This year it was behind the pump house. It's a toss-up. I mean, Deb, and all of us, that bird, it's one of those, it's like a hard decision every time you get to that intersection on which way you want to go. The good thing is most of us, you don't really want to report where ducks are because the hunters do look at eBird and Facebook and the Lake Apopka page. So you don't want to, you don't want to publicize too much. And another really good birder told me that, especially during duck hunting season, is if you want to put the birds you saw, great, but don't be specific. I saw 15 canvasback on the lakeside, or, on the inside. It just, it just kind of makes them work a little harder for it. But to your original question, it's tough. I don't know. I had white crowned sparrow on the lakeside in December. They're both good. Like I said, if you don't have a scope, I would suggest doing the interior, because you're going to see more birds. You're going to see more alligators if you've got kids with you, or if alligators are your thing. I would suggest doing the interior for sure. So again, though, the lakeside can be great, especially for those, the gulls, the terns, that kind of thing. You're almost guaranteed those on the outside. The peregrine used to like to sit in one of those trees. Now it's been sitting kind of out in the middle where you can see it from Roach as well as lakeside. So I don't think I was much help there, Deb.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Want to go on?
Yeah, I'm very indecisive with that. So anyway, as you go down Loughland, what I was saying is that first pond on your left, I had gadwalls and widgeons in there this week. Shovelers are pretty much spread throughout the park. But as you go down Loughland, it's funny because you talk to a lot of people, and from that bridge to the restrooms can be kind of a dead area. And it's also, I think, where families and kids get impatient and they've had enough of the drive and they're ready to go, and the parents are ready to go, and people that haven't been there and aren't sure what to expect, they're ready to go. So it gets a little squirrely in there with traffic sometimes. But if you take your time through there, I've had bobcats along the levee there, otters crossing the road. And when the bar marigolds are blooming through there, it's one of the most beautiful spots on the whole property. And you get a lot of small birds, warblers, painted buntings, all through there, which is nice. So next slide. Let me see where I'm at. Oh, so that first pond on the left coming from the lake, that's really good for belted kingfishers. And it's one of the major spots that I've gotten the Rosius Spoonbills, which, if you go to Merritt Island or Black Point, you see them all the time. But for us at Apopka, we don't get them in huge numbers. And when we do see them, it's, they're a cool bird, no matter how you slice it. So, but that first pond on the left by the bridge is usually pretty good. And then as you cross the bridge, when that has water back in there, that's been really good for the spoonbills and the kingfishers. So you can, next slide. Okay, so once you pass the bathrooms, it's one of my favorite spots, both sides of the road. They just put in a new pump system there at the bathrooms on the right-hand side, but just past that, you start getting in this time of year, starting in November, late August, October, November, up through now, and the end of January, February, but the ducks are just everywhere. The ringneck ducks, I talked to one of the reviewers for eBird, and I was like, look, you've got to change this filter. It's flagging me. And there's 10,000 ringneck ducks here in December. We see a couple birders count for sure. Like Chris Newton did he said, I did an exact count, or as exact as I could, count in a grid. And I think he had 5,000 one day, and that was when they'd already started kind of falling off. So anyway, as you go down Loughland, past the bathrooms, both sides of the road, it's kind of a bad spot to have all these birds because it's tough to pull over there. People are scared, you don't want to get too close to either edge, and you don't want to hold people up because, again, they're get kind of impatient by that point if they're not birding or looking for stuff in particular. But along that edge, it's been really good for shovelers, really good for ringneck ducks. And on the right-hand side, kind of a neat bird, and it's been there for about 6 weeks. There's a Lucistic Coot, which is a normally all dark bird. This bird is almost all white, and it's got a little bit of black on its face, and then the white bill. It's just kind of a cool bird, and you see it on the right-hand side before the pull-off. And it's just a cool bird to see, just because it's got a weird pigment thing going on. And at the same spot, if you can find that bird, if you look to your left, there's been a male canvasback duck, which is a beautiful duck, sitting way out on the left side, but it's been in the same spot for, 3 or 4 weeks, although I did not see it last weekend. So there's only one major pull-off on the left-hand side. I would suggest stopping there. There's always ducks out there. If you've got a scope, it's even better. But if not, even close, there's you'll see ruddy ducks, tons of ringnecks, gadwall, widgeon. We've had green-winged teal in there as well. Brian and I had a avocet out there last year, I believe. But these two pictures that I see on the right here, the top one, actually, let me do the bottom one first. It's a cinnamon teal, blue-winged teal hybrid. Ducks are not very monogamous. They like to have fun with the others, as they say. But this duck has been hanging out. I think Chris Newton found it the first week of December. But it's been in the same spot about 100 yards before the end of Loughland and about 50 yards out on your left. And it's been hanging with these blue-winged teals. I kept them in the picture so you can kind of see the pigment differences. But that's a good one to look for because it's pretty rare for us. There's actually one out on Black Point and Merritt Island right now. But this one's been hanging out, like I said, and actually it was coming out of molt. And this picture I just took on Sunday, and you can see the white in front of its eye, which you could barely see when it was first found the first week of December. So that's another good one to look for. Also on Sunday, I got to the end of Loughland, and I noticed if you look out, there's a yellow gate there with a bridge. And Jack, I don't know about your rules on that one, but there's spots to walk on either side of that yellow gate. I suggest just walking out there a little ways. Off to the right is where we had stilts, which were about 2 months too late of their normal southern migration. And we were having between 60 and 80 of them out there to the right. They've since gone, I believe. There's been a few spotted. I haven't seen them in the last 2 weeks, but I stopped at that intersection before I turned left on Interceptor, and there was a juvenile bald eagle scaring up stuff, and it was super clumsy, and it wasn't getting anything. But out of that, these two avocets, which I thought were already gone too, they flew out across the road, and I was able to grab a quick shot of those. So,
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Real quick. Yeah, that's cool to walk back there because I think it's on the left-hand side. There's a clear opening that you can walk
park
around the gate.
Yeah.
And
I would make that left and park and then walk back and go across the bridge. And that bridge was also very good for barn swallows if you want to waste your time taking thousands of pictures you're going to throw away. as I do. You can stand there though, and they nest under that bridge. So next slide.
That was where the white-faced ibis was a year
Yes,
ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was 2 years ago. It was there, and it was there for 5 or 6 weeks, which was awesome. Paul and I saw one this year at Roach and Loughland, or Roach and Wetland, and I think we're the only ones that saw it. So luckily I got a picture of it so people didn't think we were crazy, or at least I was. So the other good thing, like I said, I just mentioned the bald eagle. The harriers down Loughland on both sides are great. This is one of a million shots that I've taken that's you can actually see their face. The rest of them are usually butt shots. Cooper's hawks seem to have been pretty prevalent through there this year as well. We had there was a good, really cool immature that it would go down and get wet and just kind of sit along the creek there and dry out in the sun and fan out its feathers. And I should have put that picture up since I'm talking about it, but that's an adult. And again, they're thick through there. They're a little bit more elusive than the rest of the birds of prey that we see. But you know, I don't know. It's a really good road. You just need to look around. It's like anything out there. It's just take your time. And you know, my personal preference out there is I get out of the way. If somebody's tailgating me, I pull over, let them go by, because otherwise it's going to ruin my day. It's going to ruin theirs. So anyway, I think that's my last slide, isn't it? I hope. Next slide. Yeah. Oh, snap through these. I think I did it twice. Sorry.
Or else something's funny.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the end of the drive. And just like tonight, sometimes people get out there and you spend so much time at the beginning, you're like, oh, I'm tired. So something to consider if you, well, first of all, go early so you can get out there when the light is still good. Or I've discovered the joys of, well, first I was hiking out there like this summer. Well, even when COVID hit and the drive was closed, but you were allowed to walk in, I'd walk in from the exit, and it was just a pretty cool place to go. So this I took last weekend, and I had spent too much time, in the other parts of the drive because I was going to get out there when the light was good. Well, I failed on that. But you see these telephone poles. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is a great place for swallows, particularly in the summer. So here you got a nice collection of barn swallows, but there's two little cliff swallows mixed in there. So it's a lot of fun to look through those. It's right at that last telephone pole. They love to hang out there. The barn swallows actually nest under the bridge. And go to the next one. So this was like when I first got into birding, it's one of the first rare birds I got to see, and it was a cave swallow that came to that location. I don't believe we've had one since 2017, so maybe we're due, right? And so you get rare stuff showing up. You just never know. So go ahead and go to the next one. Next slide, please.
I'm making it go.
Oh, okay. While you're out there by that bridge, there's some trees around, and this is a place, if you're looking for white-winged dove, I found in the summer, they must have nested back there somewhere, because that would be one place I'd see them flying across the road, and they're a much bigger dove with that cool white wing, and they're a bird that's kind of moved in a little bit from out west to Florida. They're really cool. Next slide. All right, and then you'll notice once you passed where the telephone wires are and there's a bridge, there's sod fields, which are currently, they're rented out to a sod farm company. So we're not allowed to walk out there. But from the other side, especially of a scope, different times of year, we see amazing stuff out there. So it's always good to look. So go to the next slide, please. And it's very seasonal. And these are really bad pictures, but I'm using my camera. It's very exciting to see the Pectoral Sandpipers, which come all the way from the Arctic. And they were out there in August. And you can go to the next one. So you look in the grasses, you never know what you're going to see. There's a lot of these sprinklers, and a lot of times the raptors will sit up there. Sorry, my bird clock. I'm going to be. All right, my bird clock. And also, back in August, we had a black-bellied plover. There was now the golden, oh shoot, my brain's going.
Golden plover.
The American golden plover was there. I don't remember what month that was. I missed that one. So we get all kinds of rarities that show up in the sod field, particularly in the part that's a little bit shorter. And when we get good rains, it gets wetter. So particularly in migration, we get all kinds of stuff if the conditions are right. Go ahead, get next slide. Oh, next one, I think we went backwards. This, in February 2019, it was one of those things I was driving by, and these Roseate Spoonbills were right by the side of the road, right there by the sod fields, and they were just beautiful. Next slide, please. And spring and fall, we get bobolinks, and they're just gorgeous. So this was May of 2019. I saw some out there August of this past year, and they have such a cool sound. And so that's a great place to see these migrants. Next one. And so when you round the corner, there's some trees to the left, and then there's some telephone poles and stuff on the right. So I'm going to show you some birds that have been seen out there. Some were kind of from a while ago. Go ahead, next slide. Merlins, peregrines, they like to hang out there. It's a good place to see them. Of course, they have got lots of food there on the fields. And of course, we have killdeer and meadowlarks and other things that hang out there too. Okay, next one. This is not from the drive because I know Jack and Sam definitely know that, but this is a good place to see the peregrine. It's just, I didn't have a decent picture from there. So this is from the wetlands. Next slide. So that tree there, I'm going to show you a picture next. And that was this one really cool bird that was there for several months a few years back, the fork-tail flycatcher. We still think about that bird. It was amazing. It was there for several months in 2017, and lots of people got to come out and see it. And I guess when Hurricane Irma came, it wasn't to be seen again. So hopefully it's off somewhere in South America. Okay, next one. And this is a terrible shot, I know, but if you want to see swallowtail kites and Mississippi kite above the sod fields in the summer is the place to go. And you just got to go like after 11. And these Mississippi kites are so gorgeous because they're very light underneath. They have a little bit different flight pattern, and the swallowtails are awesome too. You can get, one year I remember there was hundreds and they made a tornado, and it was just amazing. Great place to see kites. Next one, please. And this was one of my slow birding walks. You notice it's in March. This was when COVID had hit, and I would just walk out through the back. You know, you can walk in, there's a walk-in gate from the exit, and I'd walk back there, and I found this gorgeous Indigo Bunting. It's just a good place. Just look in the bushes out there. This is not on the fields, but in bushes on the other side. Next. And this was on the very north end, and there was like a few weeks that this young red-tailed hawk just hung out, and you saw it must have rained. It was really wet. Next slide. And then there's the very end of the drive. There's a retention pond area, and so I'll show you a few from there. It's really easy to walk to. It's like 1/10 of a mile. So this is where the orchard orioles tend to come. They also tend to be on Conrad. And so I started seeing these in April, and it was really amazing. They're beautiful birds. Yes, you can bike in from the exit gate. I've done it. There's not a lot of parking, but there's parking there. And it's a great way to get out to the sod fields real quick. I highly recommend it. Okay, next slide. Good place for water thrush. I've been hearing them. They're out there. This is a terrible picture, I know, and you often don't see them, but you will. I'm hearing them now. They're out there. They love it out there. It's wet enough for them, and they've got places to perch. And Louisiana water thrush too. And in August, I mean, in the morning, I'd walk out in the willows, just tons of yellow warblers and other warblers too. It's just a great place to slow bird, you know, because usually if you've gone through the drive, by the time you get to the end, it's a little too dark and stuff. So sometimes just walk in from the other side. You can't drive in from that side though, but you can walk in and you can bike. Okay, next one. I think we're just about done. And back in September, I was doing my slow birding and I was wondering, where's all the warblers? Where's all the warblers? then I noticed this guy. He was in the bushes, and there's the Cooper's hawk, and he was kind of looking at me like, what are you looking at? And next slide. I think we're about done. So I think we're run over time, but we'd like to thank everyone. But I know there was a question that came through. Let me see what it was. Yeah, bike in. You saw sapsuckers. Yes. Also, I've seen the chat at kind of near Jones Retention Ponds, and I've seen eastern kingbirds. It's just a great place to explore. So when you don't have time to do the whole drive, you know, the front gate's great, but so is the back gate. So, yep. Did anyone want to share real quick in the chat? You can, or you might be tired and hungry. But the wildlife drive is just amazing. We're just so blessed to have this in our area. And if some of you from out of town, you know, when you're ready to come back birding, definitely come check out our area. It's just amazing. There's so much here. All right, let's see. If non-birders are not speeding, yeah. Well, that's why, you know, take some time another day, since you can park at the exit and walk in sometime. Even if the drive is open, if you go in the morning, you're not going to see anyone out through the exit, usually for an hour and a half. Okay, so you'll have it to yourself. It's great.
And Sherry, your question about can you walk in or bike through the Lust Road gate? Yes, you can right now. We don't know how long it's going to last, but at least probably another month or two for sure. You can, when the drive's closed during the week, you can ride your bike or walk in through the front gate. There's a parking area off to the right.
And the back gate's always been open, except when we've had hurricanes and they've had to close the whole property, then that's the only time it was closed. But normally it's open. And if you are there during the week, just be mindful that there is an active area of restoration. So there'll be trucks and sometimes, you know, dump trucks and stuff like that going through. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, on the exit coming in from there, I will, piggyback on the dump trucks. They're using several big dump trucks, and they are going over 10 miles per hour, and they're putting up a lot of dust on that section.
Cover your gear. But when they're not, you know, once they go by, it's fine. And I've found it's very worthwhile. It's just, you can find all kinds of cool things, and, you know, and mammals too, you know, bobcats, otters, you name it. You don't, just never know when those things are going to show up.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Yes, and several people asked about, you know, recordings, and it will be on our YouTube channel in a few days once it gets editing done.
It's before a few days. It'll be there tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I know you want to share it with your friends. Definitely check out our wildlife drive. It's a great place.
All right. Thank you all so much. Maybe we'll see you out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for being here. Have a good evening, everybody.
Yes. Have a good evening.
Well, we blew that one.